Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about permanent tissues. So what are permanent tissues? Permanent tissues are the ones which have attained their mature forms and they do not divide any further. Permanent tissues are basically of two types, simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. So we're going to talk about both of them in a little bit detail. So simple permanent tissues are tissues which have only one type of cells. However, complex permanent tissues have more than one type of cells. Simple permanent tissues do functions like photosynthesis, secretion, and storage of food, while complex permanent tissues are known for the distribution of water and photosynthetic products. They also perform protection in water loss, etc. So the examples of simple permanent tissue can be parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, etc. While of complex permanent tissue, there are examples like xylem and phloem. Now you can see here the types of simple and complex permanent tissues. So we have sclerenchyma, we have phloem, we have collenchyma, xylem, etc. Now here we can see the actual distribution. Permanent tissues are of two types, simple and complex, and then we have the bifurcation of simple and complex into parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, which are simple permanent tissues, and xylem and phloem, which are complex permanent tissues. Now let us talk about parenchyma. Cells of parenchyma are live, oval, elongated, loosely packed with a lot of intercellular spaces. They have a very small nucleus and a large vacuole, and their cell wall is pretty thin. What are they known for? They are known to perform functions of storage and support. And sometimes they can contain chlorophyll, and because of that, they can also perform photosynthesis. In aquatic plants, sometimes they can contain large air cavities to keep the plants afloat, and they are called as parenchyma. Now here you can see the types of parenchymatic tissues. We have erenchyma, we have palisade parenchyma, we have storage parenchyma. Then now we move on to collenchyma. So collenchyma cells can be different in shape than the parenchymatic cells. They are polygonal and their cell wall is thick. So cells are very closely packed with very less or no intercellular space. Cells also have deposits of cellulose hemicellulose pectin, which causes the cell wall to have a thicker appearance. They are the cells which provide mechanical support to plants, and also they are the ones which cause the bending when there is a bending motion or there is a flexibility to the plant whenever it bends instead of just snapping. They also carry photosynthesis due to the chloroplasts that are present. So these are the types of collenchyma. We have lamellar, racune, angular collenchyma. Then we're going to move on to sclerenchyma. Now sclerenchymatic cells are responsible for the stiffness in plants. They are considered to be dead and have no protoplast at all. They are long and narrow cells and have thick lignified cells with numerous pits. They are of two types mainly, which are fibers and sclerides. So fiber you can see is a long narrow cell, while scleride is a broader cell. So here we can distinguish between fiber and scleride in a manner that fiber is longer than the scleride. Fiber has pointed ends while sclerides are short and broad. Fibers are the ones which are occurring in bundles and they don't have branches, but sclerides on the other hand are known to be branched. Let us talk about the other tissue that we discussed, which are complex. Now complex tissues are xylem and phloem, and they are also known as vascular tissues because they have conducting properties. So, xylem is the tissue which is responsible for water and mineral conduction. It has a lot of elements, and it is one of the reasons which is why it is known as complex. So xylem has xylem vessels, xylem tracheids, xylem fibers, and xylem parenchyma. So the vessels in the xylem are the ones which are responsible for the conduction. They are long and cylindrical tube-like cells. So since they are conducting, we can assume that the conduction is taking through a tube-like manner. The xylem tracheids are also elongated and tube-like, but they have very thick lignified walls, and tracheids are dead cells, much like the xylem vessels. Xylem fibers are also thickened, they also have thickened walls, and they are basically supporting the conduction, and they can be septate or aseptate. Now, what is the function of xylem parenchyma? Xylem parenchyma are living cells. These cells are thin walled and they can store the food and the tannins. Now, you can see here in this diagram what are the various elements of xylem. We have the vessels, we have the tracheids which are lignified, the vessels which are elongated and tubular. Then we move on to primary xylem and its types. So primary xylem is of two types, which is the protoxylem and the metaxylem. What is the protoxylem and metaxylem? Protoxylem is basically the xylem elements which are formed first. So according to the formation, they are called as proto and meta. Proto are the ones which are first formed, and meta the elements which are formed later. Now there are two configurations in which these two types of elements can possibly arrange themselves. For example, there is a configuration known as the N-dark configuration, and in N-dark the protoxylem or the elements which are formed first lie towards the center facing the pith, while the metaxylem lies towards the periphery or the outer edge of the cell or the tissue. This happens in stems. Now in exarch, however, the protoxylem or the newly formed cells and elements lie towards the outside where the metaxylem faces the pith. So this is the configuration which occurs in roots. Now let us talk about phloem for a second. Phloem is the tissue which is responsible for transporting photosynthetic products and is composed of also sieve elements, phloem parenchyma, companion cells, and phloem fibers. What are sieve elements? They are also conduction cells. Now sieve elements are the ones which are primarily responsible for the conduction. They are long, tube-like, and their end walls are perforated to form sieve plates. So their end walls, they are modified to form the sieve plate. These possess cytoplasm but they lack a nucleus. Now phloem parenchyma is the parenchyma which is responsible for the storage of food. It has cylindrical cells and it has a dense cytoplasm. The cell wall is composed of cellulose, and the cell wall also actually has connections to other cell via the plasmodesmata. It also certainly has companion cells. Now these companion cells are attached to the sieve tube elements and are responsible to provide the sieve elements the energy for conduction. Phloem fibers are also present as an element of the phloem, and these are sclerenchymatous. They are elongated and unbranched and they have very thick cell wall. So jute and hemp fibers are good examples of phloem fibers, and these are commercialized to form various products like bags, etc. In this diagram, you can see all the phloem elements like companion cells, sieve tubes, etc. Now here you can see both of the tissues in comparison to each other. You have the xylem, which is conducting the water, while the phloem, which is conducting the photosynthetic products. So we have the water and minerals which are flowing in the xylem without any sieve plates in a unidirectional fashion, while in phloem we have the multidirectional fashion and we have the sieve plates as well. Cells are living in phloem whilst in xylem the cells are considered to be dead. Then the outer cells are not living and the cells are living, but they need support in phloem. We also have another diagram which depicts how the xylem and phloem are arranged as a vascular bundle. Now at the end we have a little exercise. You can stop the video here and try and attempt these questions so that you can have an understanding of the concept and evaluate yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this video and understood the concepts that were talked about. Thank you so much.